we're going to move on now, and I'm going to introduce our next speakers, who are Jessica Welch, talking on the Exenatide PD-3 trial, and also Katarina Gunter on digital outputs.
Hello. So my name's Jess. You've all probably received many emails from me over the last few weeks, which I can only apologise for. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the Exenatide trial. Some of you may have heard about it already, some of you may have even actually participated in it, so I'm just going to give a bit of an overrun of it. So at Oxford we're running the phase 3 trial, and it's a multi-centre, double-blinded, randomised, placebo-controlled trial, very simply. So it's being run across 6 sites across the UK, and the centre and the main site is UCL in London by Professor Fultony. The hope of this is that it's actually going to be a disease-modifying drug. So it's hoping to slow down the progression in Parkinson's already, using an already approved drug, which is Exenatide, which is currently used in type 2 diabetes. The primary outcome of the study is to compare the MDS UPDRS Part 3 scores in an off state. So all of this stuff that you've all probably done many times before, it's those scores that we're comparing. It involves self-administering an injection once a week of either 2 milligrams of Exenatide or 2 milligrams of placebo. Nobody knows what anyone is on. For phase 3, it's a 96-week trial, so it's about 2 years, so it's quite a long trial. And the aim was to recruit 200 participants across all sites. I think the final number they got to was 197, I believe, 198. We had a few issues because of COVID, which definitely hindered the recruitment, but we got there. So patients are seen every 12 weeks in clinic, which I'll go into a bit more detail. But a bit of a science background into how the drug works. So Exenatide is a GLP-1 agonist, so it stimulates the release of insulin from the pancreas, but it's also thought that GLP-1 agonists are thought to have some beneficial effects on the brain. And these include to reduce inflammation, to switch on brain cell survival signals, improve energy production, and also improve dopamine neuron function, which is obviously very key in Parkinson's. So the visits happen, like I said, every 12 weeks, and these are face-to-face. And luckily, even during the pandemic, we were still able to see patients in clinic, which was really great. They alternate between long and short visits. So the longer visits, patients come in off of their Parkinson's medication. So that was one of the criteria to being on the trial. You had to be able to come in off medication, which is obviously quite a big thing for patients, especially if they've never had to do that before. We do a range of assessments. The clinics probably last about 2.5 hours. We do the UPDRS off and on their medication. So it's quite lengthy. It's quite a big trial to be part of. There's quite a lot of stuff that the patients have to do. And we do safety bloods, and we give more injections. And then we alternate between the short and the long. So the short visits tend to be 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're not quite as long. Mainly to do safety bloods, check if there's been any adverse events, and we give them some more injections. At Oxford, and I think across all of the other sites as well, 2 sites. Oh yes, so 3 sites in total. We're doing a sub-study of the smartphone. So I'm sure many of you, as part of Discovery, have taken the smartphone home for a week and had that high-pitched beep going off 3 times a day. Katarina is going to go into the results of that in a little bit. But that's a really key sub-study for us and within OPDC. So how did we get here? So like I said, it's a phase 3. So it's already gone through a pilot study and a phase 2. So actually to get to phase 3, there had to have been some kind of encouraging results shown, which luckily there have been. So as you can see on the pilot study, we only had, where's the little? There it is. So we only had 45 participants, and that included patients who were either given Exenatide or nothing. And the follow-up assessments showed that those who did take exenatide had their symptoms were better compared to those who hadn't taken anything extra other than their normal medication, and actually their symptoms had worsened. The same was seen in the phase 2, so as you can see, the participants included increased, and that also then included a placebo arm as well. It was done for 48 weeks, and there was a follow-up 12 weeks after completion, which again showed the same results as the pilot study. So this then led to a phase 3. So we had to include a lot more participants for this one, so around 200. It started in 2020, which was a great year to start a drug trial. Again, it was drug versus placebo, but this time it was for 2 years. It's currently ongoing still, so I think I've got it on the next screen. So at the moment, I cannot give any results, unfortunately. But I have spoken to UCL, and so far no safety concerns have been associated with the study, which is great. And so far 97 patients have completed the 96-week follow-up. So we're almost there. The last planned visit is next February. So we're getting there. With the results hoping to come out next summer, which is when everyone will be told what arm they're on, and what happens next, basically. So that's it for the exenatide one, and I will pass you over to Katarina.
So hi, my name's Katarina, and I joined the OPDC just over a year ago. And I have a background in pharmacology and engineering. And for the past few years, I've kind of been focused on how we can create machine learning models which can help us better understand and manage Parkinson's disease as well as REM sleep behavior disorder. So at the OPDC, I work mainly on the digital side of things, and today I'm going to give you a small update on that. Specifically the OPDC smartphone app, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So this is an application which has been developed through many versions over the past 10 years. And the idea behind the app and much of the digital work that we do is to kind of understand how to see how we can integrate technology, which already plays a major role in our lives, into the current system to help us better manage and understand Parkinson's disease. So just a quick question for the group, if you can just put your hand up. How many of you have access to a smartphone? So pretty much the whole room. So you might ask, why would we be creating a smartphone application? We're not Facebook, we're not a tech giant, we're not making millions of dollars off of this. Well, there are a few reasons for that. Currently, the gold standard for assessing motor movement function in patients with Parkinson's disease or probable Parkinson's disease is a series of questionnaires and subjective assessments which are carried out by a clinician. What I mean by subjective is that there might be a difference in, if you have two different clinicians assessing you, there'll be a difference in the score that they give you. The clinician needs to be trained in this, and these assessments are also time-consuming. These assessments, which are also currently used in clinical trials to assess how well a patient is responding to a new medication, are also only done at certain time points. Let's say, for example, every 6 months. So this is really just giving us a snapshot of how that patient is doing at that exact point in time. So, as we've seen, pretty much everybody in this room has access to a smartphone. I'm sure many of you have your own. So this means that a smartphone app is highly accessible. It's also objective. So if I use the app and you use the app, it would be making the same assessment. And we can also use it at multiple times per day, at any time point, essentially. Just a quick run through of the app. So it consists of 7 simple tests. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. And it measures a whole range of things which are designed to mimic what a clinician would measure. The data that we collect is de-identified. That means that it can't be directly linked to you. It's also encrypted and it's saved on a secure database. So what do we actually do with the data that we collect? So basically, these smartphones have a series of sensors which measure a whole range of things, and we get that raw data. And from this data, we extract something called features. And a feature is just something that describes that data or the event itself. It could, for example, be a summary statistic. So to give you a more real-life example of that, let's say you drove from Oxford to London, and I wanted to know something about that event. A feature could, for example, be the mean speed at which you drove. That tells me something about that journey, and that's essentially what we're extracting from the data. Summary, things that describe the data. We then train a machine learning model to take those features and give us an output which is as close as possible to what we are trying to predict. So we give it an input, we say this is what we're trying to get out, learn how to get there. And what we're trying to predict with the smartphone app is a motor score, basically a score of the patient's motor symptoms. So where have we come with this work in the Exenatide trial, which Jess just explained, and where do we plan to go? So we've trained a machine learning model using our own discovery cohort data in order to output a motor score, and we've seen that it's highly feasible to do this just using the smartphone app. When we used this model that we trained on a subset of the data from the Exenatide trial, participants who participated in that and used the smartphone, we were able to see a shift in the motor score when they were on or off medication in the vast majority of patients. This means that we can see that their symptoms improve when they're on medication just from the output of the app. We also were able to train another model to be able to tell whether a subject is on or off medication with really high accuracy. This means using the app and it telling me you're on medication or you're off medication. We also asked people how they felt about the app, and the vast majority were very willing to use it both at home as well as in clinic. So what does all of this really mean? Well, it's pretty clear that the OPDC smartphone app has the potential to assess patient symptoms as well as track improvement in response to medication. Now, there are a lot of things left to do here to assess how this can be integrated into the current system. Firstly, once the Exenatide trial is finished and we have those results, we would want to see if we can replicate those results just using the smartphone app. This will allow us to evaluate how we can use the app to assess the efficacy of a new treatment over time. And remember, with this, we're getting multiple readings per day rather than just that snapshot of the state of the patient as I previously described. So really it has a potential to shift how we evaluate new treatments for Parkinson's disease. Finally, I'd just like to thank everybody who has participated and actually used the smartphones. This is a quote from the inventor of the internet. And what he means by data outlasting the systems themselves is that data is not a single-use asset, it's really valuable. And we can use it in so many new ways for important applications and discoveries. Finally, I'd just like to say that if you have used the smartphone, we'd love your feedback. Thank you.